The gentleman from the 6th District, Representative Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to everyone here and the gentleman of the 48th for his tireless work on this budget. Tonight, what we did was we spoke about our 3 priorities from this side of the aisle, and we tried to lay them out very clearly. We talked about our bold and our firm stance that education and kids must and will, under our watch, be the #1 priority in the state of Washington. We talked about public safety and the importance of that in keeping our citizens safe during recessions and during prosperity. And we also talked about the developmentally disabled and the dignity that they deserve, and that they will always not only have a voice, but a seat in this House. You know, there's a story about a professor who had a jar, and Mr. Speaker, if you indulge me for 45 seconds, it will come back around, who had a jar in the front of his room one day and invited all the students to come down one by one. And he had 3 huge rocks and a lot of pebbles. And he said, if any student can put all the rocks and all the pebbles in that jar and put the lid back on the jar, then they will get an A for the course. One by one, each student failed. They put in some pebbles, a rock, pebbles, rock, so forth. The student that succeeded was the one that took one of the big rocks, put it into the jar first, took the second rock, put it into the jar second, and took the third rock and put it into the jar third. Education, public safety, developmentally disabled. And then the remaining pebbles will miraculously fit, and the ones that fit in the jar will be there. But unless we as a state come to the decision and that fork in the road to where we say we know what our 3 rocks are, then our jar, the lid, will continually not fit on the jar. And as we have seen, $4 billion will not put the lid back on that jar. Out of the $4.4 billion in cuts, 1.3 will be from K through 12. My life was changed by education, and for some of us, that story is true here. And I remain resolute that education changes the trajectory of a life. Those cuts are unacceptable. And in public safety, we saw the cuts totaling $31 million. We saw that prisoners will be let out early on our streets. We saw $5.2 million in reductions to community reductions. We saw a total of 395 prison staff will be let go. And then we heard how this budget is robbing dignity of the developmentally disabled and their ability to work. One of the most successful, vibrant, meaningful programs this body has probably ever been a part of is now being stripped away. I talked to a parent who lost named Lance, who lost his son at the age of 24. Lance, his son, Lance Jr., was developmentally disabled, and it was this program that the legislature is taking away that changed his life. We saw in 2008, general fund revenues were $15.8 million, yet the legislature spent $16.4. In 2009, they were $14.4, yet the legislature spent $16.2. And we saw in 2010, $13.8 million, and the legislature spent $15.2, and we've left some behind. You see, jobs, we talk about getting Washington working again because in our hearts, it has great meaning, and we know it has great meaning to the state of Washington. You know, we're faced with a choice here. I know my time's concluding. We can either walk back to the place we've always been, which is what this budget does, or we can take a step forward into the irresistible future and be the ones that put Washington on a trajectory that it's never seen before. Thank you. I urge a no vote.